Easter is supposed to be a peaceful day, a day filled with faith, family, and hope. For most people, it's a time of prayer, celebration, and joy inside the safest place they know, the church. But when I was a child, something happened on Easter Sunday that changed the way I looked at safety forever. I was around 6 or 7 years old at the time. My family has always been very religious, so Easter was a huge deal in our house. We never missed church, especially on important holidays. In fact, even regular Sundays felt like a big event because of how seriously my parents treated church. Some of my earliest memories are sitting in wooden pews, listening to hymns, and watching my parents pray quietly. And one of those memories turned into something I still think about to this day. It was Easter Sunday, and the church was completely packed. Families were everywhere. Kids were dressed in their best clothes, and everyone seemed happy and excited. The service was much longer than usual, but I didn't really mind. I had been taught to respect church and stay quiet during prayer. After the service ended, it was time for Sunday school. Our church called it CCD. Like always, my parents walked me downstairs to the classrooms and told me they would pick me up after class. The church had a split-level layout. Upstairs was the main sanctuary with the altar and pews. Downstairs was the basement where all the classrooms were. It was technically a basement, but since the church was built on a slope, you could still walk outside from down there. There was a long, carpeted hallway with classrooms on both sides, grouped by age. My classroom was one of the first rooms on the left. At the very end of the hallway were the bathrooms, one for boys and one for girls. Right next to them was a heavy gray metal door that led outside. The adults always warned us about that door. They told us never to use it because it would lock behind us, and we wouldn't be able to get back inside. It was only meant for emergencies. The entire downstairs had been decorated for Easter. Pastel streamers covered the walls. Paper lambs and crosses were taped everywhere. Drawings of Jesus were hanging between the classroom doors. Some teachers were even wearing bunny ears. It honestly felt more festive down there than it did upstairs during Mass. All the kids were happy and excited because everyone knew there would be an Easter egg hunt later in the day. Class had just started, and we were coloring pictures of Jesus rising from the tomb. That's when I realized something. I really needed to use the bathroom. The Easter service had been so long that I couldn't hold it anymore. So I raised my hand and asked the teacher if I could go. She nodded and told me to hurry back. The bathroom was only a short walk down the hallway. It was normal for kids to go alone, so I quietly stepped out of the classroom and walked toward it. The hallway felt quieter than usual as I walked. The sound of children talking slowly faded behind me. I reached the boys' bathroom and pushed the door open. Inside, it was silent. Just the soft humming of fluorescent lights and faint voices echoing from the classrooms. I walked into one of the stalls and closed the door behind me. Everything felt normal, until I heard something. A strange, scraping sound came from the stall next to mine. At first, I thought it was another kid, but then I listened more carefully. It didn't sound normal. It sounded like metal slowly dragging across the stall door. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I felt confused, not scared. I assumed it was just another kid messing around. So I finished and stepped out to wash my hands. As I stood at the sink, I looked into the mirror. And that's when I saw the stall door behind me slowly opening. A grown man stepped out. He was wearing an Easter bunny costume. The suit looked old and dirty. The fur was grayish instead of white, and one of the eyes looked crooked like it had been sewn back on. The ears drooped slightly, and the whole costume looked worn and stained. But I was a child, so I didn't feel scared. I thought it was just the Easter bunny. I smiled and said, "Hi." He didn't respond. He just stood there staring at me, his head slightly tilted. The silence felt strange. Then slowly, he stepped forward and raised his arm, pointing toward the door like he wanted me to follow him. Finally, he spoke in a muffled voice. "You're the lucky chosen child. I have a gift for you outside." I felt excited. I thought I had been chosen for a special Easter surprise. This was happening inside a church, so I trusted him completely. Without thinking, I walked to the heavy gray door and pushed it open, and stepped outside. The Easter Bunny followed right behind me. He started walking across the parking lot, and I followed him. There was a car parked far away near a dumpster and some bushes. I remember thinking it was strange that he parked so far away. At one point, he took my hand and kept leading me toward the car. Then something happened that made everything feel wrong. Another Easter Bunny stepped out of the car. There were two of them. I stopped walking. My brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. Two Easter Bunnies standing in the parking lot. That's when the excitement disappeared. Something felt very wrong. And then, suddenly, I heard a scream. One of the teachers had walked outside and saw what was happening. It was the loudest, most terrified scream I had ever heard. The man immediately let go of my hand and ran toward the car. Without thinking, I ran in the opposite direction toward the teacher. She grabbed me and pulled me close as the car sped out of the parking lot. As it drove away, I caught a quick glimpse inside the back seat. I think there was another child in there. The police were called immediately. My parents were devastated when they found out what had happened. My mom cried for hours after we got home. The police asked me questions and investigated the church, but nothing ever came from it. No suspects were found. No missing children were reported. The theory was that the man had somehow gotten inside and waited in the bathroom for a child to come in. And by pure bad luck, that child had been me. What scares me the most isn't what happened. It's what almost happened. Because if that teacher hadn't walked outside at that exact moment, I probably wouldn't be here telling this story today. Even now, every time Easter comes around, I can't help but think about that day and wonder who those men really were and what they were planning to do. It was the Thursday before Easter. School was canceled the next day, so my friends and I decided to have a sleepover at Raz's house. Raz wasn't his real name. His last name was Razzie, but everyone called him Raz. His family had the biggest house in the area, practically isolated with a backyard that bordered a wooded area. His parents were out of town, leaving the house and the woods all to us. We were just playing video games in the basement when Chuck suggested a game of manhunt. We grabbed flashlights from the garage and used a random number generator on Jake's phone to pick teams. I was paired with Chuck and Raz as seekers. Jake and Arthur were hiding. Raz also grabbed a bunch of plastic Easter eggs from upstairs, so the game was a mix of manhunt and an Easter egg hunt. The rules were simple. Seekers had to find the hiders, but hiders also had to protect a few eggs. If the seekers failed or the hiders captured all the eggs, the hiders won. We set a timer, gave the hiders time to hide, and the game began. The sun had already set, but there was still enough moonlight to move without tripping. I veered left into a thick patch of trees while Raz and Chuck went the other way. I used my flashlight sparingly, skimming the ground for obstacles. A few minutes in, I saw movement ahead, about 20 or 30 feet away. At first, I thought it was one of my friends hiding. But as I crept closer, I realized it wasn't. Someone was crouching behind a tree, perfectly still. My heart started to race. I crouched down and tried to circle behind them, planning to tap them and yell, "Gotcha!" When I lunged forward and tapped their shoulder, it wasn't a friend, it was a grown man. His hair was slicked back, his eyes wide like he was on drugs, and his clothes were torn and filthy. He smelled horrible. Before I could even react, he tackled me to the ground. I hit the dirt hard, trying to fight him off, but he pinned me down and pressed his hands around my throat. I couldn't breathe. My arms were weak. I genuinely thought my life was over. Then, out of nowhere, a flashlight beam bounced across the trees behind us. One of my friends must have been approaching. The man suddenly released me and bolted into the woods without a word. I lay there gasping for air, too stunned to move. Chuck reached me moments later, helped me up and told me he saw the whole thing. We ran back to Raz's house. Chuck called the others and we all gathered inside. That's when Arthur said something that made my stomach drop. Before the game even started, Before the 10-minute hiding period ended, he had seen two people moving through the woods, like they were scouting, waiting for something. It hit us all at once. If it wasn't us, then there were at least 3 strangers out there. One attacked me, and 2 more were moving around before the game even began. I wanted to call the cops immediately, but Raz refused. He was grounded and wasn't allowed to host anyone while his parents were away. Involving the authorities would get him in serious trouble. I argued, I begged, but no one else wanted to put Raz in a difficult situation. So, reluctantly, I stayed quiet. I spent the rest of the night on edge. I went to bed early, and the next morning I left Raz's house before anyone else woke up. Even now I can't forget it. 3 strangers, lurking in the woods, watching, waiting, and me, just a kid, lucky to have escaped. Some lessons can't be taught, some dangers. You just survive by chance. I was in college now, far from home, but Easter always had a way of reminding me of the past. Every year, my extended family took a trip to my Uncle John's house. He lived way out in the sticks, surrounded by woods. Huge house, wide open land, and those woods stretched for miles. I'd been there before, but never ventured far into the trees. Nature wasn't really my thing, and honestly, I preferred staying inside. Kevin, my cousin, was the only one close to my age. A couple years older, chill, always keeping me company during these family trips. We drove there late Friday night. Exhausted, I went straight to bed. The next morning, Kevin and I spent a few hours in the basement, playing pool. The house was packed with relatives, the usual holiday chaos. Kevin kept talking about the woods behind the house, how magical they were, how beautiful the isolation felt. I mostly nodded along. Nature wasn't my thing, but I couldn't deny his enthusiasm. By afternoon, he convinced me to take a walk with him. We told Uncle John where we were going. He didn't mind, he trusted us. Kevin led the way, cutting across the backyard and into the woods. The path wasn't wild, just a natural trail, but the deeper we went, the more uneasy I felt. After about 20 minutes, I asked if he knew the way back. He laughed and said he knew these woods like the back of his hand. I tried to believe him. Another 20 minutes in, we heard it. A loud, recurring thunk, like a hammer hitting wood. Pause. Another hit. Pause. Another. Kevin looked startled. I was frozen. It didn't sound like an animal, maybe a hunter, but there was something off. We kept walking cautiously toward the sound, curiosity and fear warring inside me. Then Kevin suddenly stopped, holding his arm out. I froze. He pointed up into the trees. There were 3 upside-down crosses, nailed into 3 trees, 15, maybe 20 feet high. Before we could react, I sensed movement. I whipped my head around. A man stood there, like a lumberjack. Thick beard, dark stare. He wasn't moving, just watching. Kevin stepped in front of me, partially shielding me. The man's gaze locked on me. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Kevin apologized immediately, explaining we were leaving. The man didn't move, just stared. We backed away slowly, never taking our eyes off him. I felt my hands shaking uncontrollably. By the time we reached the house, my stomach twisted. We told Uncle John what we saw. "No one I know matches that description," he said, frowning. He asked if we'd been followed. We said no. There wasn't much else to do. Someone suggested we arm ourselves and check the woods, but Uncle John refused. He wanted no confrontation. Kevin and I went downstairs to try to calm down, but I couldn't shake it. That night, I went to bed early. I woke up around 5 a.m., the sky barely light. Looking out Uncle John's study window, I saw a faint, flickering glow at the edge of the woods. Not a flashlight, a small fire. I went outside to investigate, and froze. 3 figures stood just past the woods, holding small torches, motionless, staring at the house, at me. I ran straight to Uncle John, waking him up. Without hesitation, he grabbed his rifle, threw on pants, and marched out. By the time he reached the deck, the figures had disappeared back into the woods. He fired 3 shots into the air, waking the entire house. The rest of the day was chaos. The Easter morning ruined, everyone on edge. When my parents and I finally left, I was relieved. 9 months later, Uncle John hasn't seen or heard anything since. Still, I'd hate to live there knowing someone, or something, had been lurking just beyond the edge of the woods. Some threats aren't obvious. Some dangers just wait.